Hey guys, and welcome back. I'm Rachel O'Leary, and today we're sitting out by my tubs. Now, if you're new here, I have been breeding fish and raising plants in Rubbermaid tubs and other containers in my yard for the past 15 years, 5 of which I've shown on YouTube, and you can access those playlists on my home screen. Today, I thought I would address some of the questions that have cropped up again and again over the years on my channel about summer tubbing specifically. And today we're going to give you the top 5 tips I have for having the most success with your summer tubs. Tip number 5 is about maintenance. Now, there are always many ways to do anything to do with animal husbandry or rearing aquatics or raising plants. So today I'm going to tell you what works best for me, and that is the K.I.S.S method, keeping it simple, stupid. The tubs in my greenhouse are filtered with sponge filtration, mainly for surface agitation and oxygen exchange as it gets profoundly hot in there. Here in the yard, in various years, I've used from no filtration to sponge filtration to this year, I'm utilizing a series of small pumps that just, again, break up that surface area as well as oxygenate the water and make it a little less hospitable for mosquitoes to lay their eggs. I do feed my plants at the start of the season as well as fertilize my lilies throughout the growing season every 4 to 6 weeks once temperatures are in the 70s during the day and over the 50s at night. I also will prune as needed, removing some of the surface floaters, and I really layer my planting heavily from having a lot of surface plants to provide shade and help regulate the temperature of the tubs, to having a lot of mid-water plants in order to provide spawning surfaces, grazing surfaces, and protection from the fry from potential predators, as well as deep plants like my water lilies, just to have a surface at the bottom of the tub as I don't utilize substrate. I don't do any water changes. I really rely on Mother Nature here in Pennsylvania to do that for me. We do get frequent rains throughout the summer, but if I do have a profoundly dry spell, I'll top off the tubs with my hose, which is well water, so I don't require any chemicals, any dechlorinator or anything like that. I also have water collection system from my greenhouse if I wanted to utilize straight rainwater. Now, my tap water here has a TDS of about 90 and is very close and very dilute, so I don't have to worry too much about parameter shifts, especially when just topping off. I do manually remove algae throughout the season, especially that stringy stuff should it get particularly thick and disgusting. Although the fish don't mind it, for me it's easier to manage, maintain, and visualize the species within the tub if I remove some of that algae. Tip number 4 is about pests and predators. In the greenhouse, there's very little of that since it's an enclosed environment. That being said, mosquitoes will still lay their eggs in the plants and I will get mosquito larvae. And since I breed predominantly shrimp in my tubs, they don't really eat the mosquito larvae, so I utilize BTIs, which are a bacterium that prevent the mosquitoes from, or the larvae from hatching into mosquitoes. They're also called mosquito dunks, mosquito bits, or mosquito granules. They're relatively affordable, super easy to use, and extremely useful within our tubs, especially when raising shrimp or profoundly small fish. Now, they are considered to be drinking water safe, so they're no risk to the environment. Out here in the yard, I've never really had problems with predators, things like raccoons or cats or herons or anything like that. If you live in an area where this is a problem, there's a few things that you can do. You can set up netting over the top of your tubs, and that'll prevent the dragonflies from getting into the plants to lay their larvae or their eggs, which then become larvae, which can eat a lot of fish as well as invertebrates. You can utilize chemical means, different medications. This is not my preference, as not only does it kill the dragonfly larva, but will also kill any snails, shrimp, or microcrustaceans that we're utilizing to feed our critters, things like Daphnia, scuds, etc. You can set up motion sensors with lights in order to startle away raccoons, but for me it's always worked out best just to have my tubs placed really well. I put them extremely close to my house, and luckily for me, I've never had any issues with any predators. Other than one year, I did have a profound problem with a migratory species of dragonfly, and that I just had to do manual removal. It was devastating and a pain in the butt, but luckily it's only happened 1 out of those 15 years. Tip number 3 is feeding. Now, whether or not you need to feed depends on a lot of factors. How long were your tubs set up? Are they well seasoned with Daphnia or other microcrustaceans? Have you developed a good film of algae? How thick is your plant growth? I find that feeding is largely unnecessary. However, I do it a couple times a week simply so that I can visualize the fish within the tubs better. As you can imagine, as the plant mass gets very thick in these tubs, it can be really difficult to see how the fish are doing. And I find that feeding them is a great way to get them to come to the surface so I can get an idea of how many fish I have, what their body condition looks like, and if there's any problems. So feeding is largely optional. You know, if you feel better about feeding, go for it. Just again, as always, be cautious about overfeeding as you don't want to pollute your tubs. This will also feed algae should you be having algae issues. So in my opinion, often with outdoor tubs, less is more. Tip number 2 is, I think, one of the most important, and that is pay attention to your weather. I can't tell you when it's safe for you to move out your critters. I can't tell you when you need to add supplemental heat. I can't tell you what your weather is going to do. The best thing that you can do is really pay attention to your weather report. Ideally speaking, overnights would not dip below the mid-50s, and daytimes would stay in the 70s or higher for you to keep most of these subtropical or tropical species outside. There is a small temperature shift, but if you're utilizing larger tubs like I am, 80 gallons or larger, it is really very minor, and the fish just sink to the bottom where it's warmer when things get cool, and then move throughout when the weather is more moderate. It's always better to be safe rather than sorry, so make sure you have a plan for what you're going to do with all your offspring, or even if you're just putting fish out for them to mature, color up, and grow, make sure you have your space planned in your home for when the season ends. For me, that's generally around September in the yards and a little bit later in the greenhouse. Mother Nature can be fickle. Cold snaps happen, major thunderstorms happen. You have to have a plan for what you're going to do if you're going to get a lot of rain or no rain. In my tubs, I have holes drilled around the edge as well as overflows with screening that allows for water to flow out should we have profound rains, as we have the past few days. You'll notice as we look around, my tubs are extremely full, sometimes right up to the edge of the tub, and that's because we have had so much rain the past few weeks. Now, generally speaking, the fish and critters will go to the bottom during these weather episodes, so them actually floating out is not an issue, but you can lose plants, and it's always better to be safe than sorry. So if you know, or if you're experiencing a ton of rain, sometimes it's a good idea to go out and drain some of the levels off your tub so that you have more of a cushion to deal with that influx of water. Same thing goes as for having a plan for if it's going to be profoundly dry. Can you store water? Is your tap water good enough for you to add to the tubs? Make sure you know what you're going to do if your tubs get low. For instance, in my greenhouse, each week I routinely have to top those off, whereas in the yard I rarely to never do. And my top tip for you guys is really to trust your gut and pay attention. Don't follow anyone's advice specifically on the internet to the letter. You have to be aware of your environment, your abilities, and your critters in order to give them the best shot possible. For me, summer tubbing is super fun. I have tons of success. I usually get a really high yield. I really enjoy growing all the plants, overwintering the plants, and starting again from season to season. I found this to be a really great way to increase the amount of fish I have, to grow a bunch of plants that are super fun, to provide auditory and visual enrichment to my yard. But it all boils down to me paying attention to what's happening in my tubs for it to be successful. Anyway, I hope you guys have found this video useful. As always, thank you for the continued support. Please stay tuned to my channel and make sure you're subscribed with that notification bell on, because I'm going to be having a bunch of really different content coming out. I recently spent 3 weeks up in the Allagash Wilderness Waterway where I did a canoe trip. We spent 9 days and paddled 100 miles through a whole bunch of different types of waterways, encountering beaver and moose, a bunch of really cool stuff. I tested a bunch of water. I got some underwater footage of both the habitats and the fish, and I'm going to be releasing a very long format video as well as several short format videos. So if you're interested in that content, please make sure you're subscribed. I'll see you in the next video, and thanks again for the continued support.